You know, they say calculus has a steep learning curve. But hey, at least if you learn, you'll know exactly how steep that learning curve is. My name is Jonathan, and this is my grade 12 calculus summative presentation about calculus and how it is used in the life of an economist. So before I begin, I want to give you guys a brief rundown of what I'm going to be talking about today. Firstly, I'm going to be looking at who uses calculus, which are economists, and I'm going to be observing what being one actually entails. Then I'm going to be exploring why they use calculus and what their goals are. After, I'm going to be talking about how they use calculus to accomplish the aforementioned goals and its applications. Finally, I'm going to conclude by looking at what types and aspects of calculus economists actually use and what the advantages are of using them. So moving right into it. Who uses calculus? Well, economists do. And what are economists, you might ask? Well, you could probably ask Mr. Jekyll, but he's not actually here right now, so you're going to have to ask me, and I'd be glad to answer that question. So economists are professionals who analyze the production, distribution, and consumptions of goods and services in an economy. They analyze how businesses can make decisions regarding resource allocation and what impact those decisions will have. That aspect of their job is very, very similar to a market research analyst, and they both use the same types of calculus to solve the same problem. Economists also identify economic problems and trends, which is very similar once again to an economic consultant who again use the same types of calculus to solve that problem. In the business field, there are many jobs that kind of intersect and overlap with each other, and this is a perfect example of how. So moving on, why do economists actually use calculus? Well, I identify that they have two main goals. Firstly, to maximize profits for their companies, because obviously if you hire an economist, that's what you would want them to do. You would want them to make money for you. Additionally, under that umbrella, economists also use calculus to analyze supply and demand graphs for different products and services. So now, how do economists actually use calculus to solve those goals? Firstly, to maximize profits for their companies, ironically, economists often minimize the amount of resources that are needed to make different products. This leads to an increased efficiency in resources and saves a lot of money. Additionally, economists, to analyze supply and demand graphs, use calculus to find out exactly how sensitive supply and demand actually are to changes in price. This is very useful information to know because let's say you had a product that had the same demand no matter what you sold it for. Then you could just sell it for however much you wanted and still profited. So what aspects of calculus do economists use to solve said problem? Well, to minimize the amount of resources needed to create a certain product, economists use optimization to, you guessed it, optimize the smallest amount of surface area of a resource needed to create certain volumes. For example, if I was trying to hold a certain amount of a drink, let's say like coffee on the image on the right, economists would be in charge of creating a cup that could accomplish this goal with the least amount of resources. Additionally, to observe different positions on the supply and demand curve and the sensitivity of quantity supplied and demanded as it relates to price, economists use differentiation and find the derivative of the different functions. This works because the derivative is a slope of all the tangent lines, and you're looking at the sensitivity of quantity supplied and demanded as it relates to different changes in price. So here, right now, we have examples of problems that economists might solve. On the left here, we have an example of an optimization problem of a cylinder, and on the right, we have an example of taking the derivative of a function. In this case, it looks like a very steep supply curve. Now, finally, what are the advantages of using calculus? For an economist, at least. Well, firstly, calculus is very effective at observing changes in different variables, and also how they change in respect to one another. This is very helpful for economists, so calculus is good because it's great at modeling changes. Additionally, calculus is easily adaptable. Using calculus is also very helpful because it allows us to find things like slope, maximum and minimum values, derivatives, etc. of many different types of functions. This is very helpful for economists specifically because in a market, supply and demand graphs always look different. demand might be higher for one product on one day, and supply might be higher for another on a different day. So that's why we use calculus, because it's easily adaptable to all these different types of changes. That is going to be the end of my presentation today. I hope you learned something, and thank you very much for listening.